Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Lounge Lab, the official podcast for the Skill Up episode. For those of you that don't know me yet or who are watching us for the first time, I'm Konstantinos Georgiou. I'm the project manager of Skill Up. And today I'm very glad to host Dr. Ilias Livanos, an expert from CEDEFOP in the Department of the Skills and the Labor Market, who is also an honorary professor, associate professor, excuse me, at the University of Warwick. And we will talk today about skills intelligence, a term that has been circulating a lot in the European Union lately, and I hope that we will shed some light today. So, Dr. Livanos, I'm glad that you're here with me.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here. It's my pleasure to be part of this initiative. I really enjoy recording podcasts and I look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you very much. So, you want to tell a bit more about yourself, or you're covered with what I said?
Yes, I can say a few things about myself. First of all, I'm an economist by training, as we used to say. I have a degree in economics from the University of Piraeus here in Greece. And then I moved to the area of industrial relations and I have a master's from the University of Warwick. And then I moved into a PhD in employment research. So I've been researching skills and the economics of education and the labor market for quite some time. I've spent about 10 years in the UK academia doing research and teaching at universities. And then I moved back to CEDEFOP since 2014. I'm an expert there and I had various interesting projects regarding the skills and the labor market in the European Union.
So I think that you know the ins and outs of the labor market, which is an area that I'm also interested in a lot, and we're doing in our project Skill Up. So we've all heard about CEDEFOP, and we know it as a European body that monitors the labor market, skills, upskilling, and all the buzzwords that also concern Skill Up. But what is it exactly that you do there? What's the main purpose of CEDEFOP as a company?
Okay, so CEDEFOP is a European center, a decentralized European center, thus the location in Thessaloniki. We've been in Thessaloniki since 1995, before we were in Berlin, of course, way before I was actually born.
Yeah.
And the mission of CEDEFOP is supporting the promotion, development, and implementation of the union policy in the field of vocational education and training, as well as skills and qualification policies by working together with the Commission, the Member States, and the social partners. So, to this end, what we do is we enhance and we disseminate knowledge, we provide evidence and services for policy making, including research based conclusions, and facilitate knowledge sharing and between union and national actors.
All right. So an audience member, say a European citizen or a policymaker, could he or she benefit from your insights by examining which skills are on demand or which qualification levels are demanded for certain positions, let's say?
Absolutely. So, this is, let's say, the end user. What we actually do at CEDEFOP is we provide the intelligence, if you like. So, the actors, the ones that I mentioned, the Commission, the social partners, and the member states, make the right decisions from which the individuals, in the end of the day, they will benefit. Having said that, the last decade, we have been focusing on what you already mentioned, the so-called skills intelligence, which is an attempt to take it a step further and bring all this information that traditionally has been parked, if you like, in academic articles, in reports, in the drawers, into some online tools and some easy to use ways aiming to help the European citizens to take advantage of them. But the direct answer would be that yes, we help the citizens, but mostly indirectly.
Yes,
So, for a
through.
citizen to be able to understand what we're presenting,
Mhm.
needs to have a certain level of knowledge in the area.
I see. But as far as I know, CEDEFOP provides some tools that can provide
Absolutely.
insights and
Mhm.
okay.
Indeed. So I can make a few mentions. First of all, what started almost everything is the skills forecast, a product slash project that has been running for about 20 years now, and I've been privileged to be there since day one. And what it is a pan-European approach to skill needs forecasting, which is in essence providing projections about employment towards the future for sectors, occupations for all member states. And we started this initiative in 2005. Apologies. There was an initiative of CEDEFOP held in Paphos, Cyprus, where were present about 15 countries. Of course, the European Union was a bit smaller back
Yes,
then.
it was smaller
And
then.
they discussed whether it is possible to go pan-European when it comes to skill needs forecasting. Before that, the countries had, they still do, they had their own methodologies using different data, using different taxonomies, using different classifications. And we discussed whether it is possible to go pan-European. By the end of the workshop, it was a 2-day workshop, the answer was probably, it's not possible, but let's do it.
Okay.
And that
So,
was really
sounds bold.
amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because everybody would say that we use a different methodology in our country, we use a different classification. It is impossible to have something comparable. But 20 years later, we have developed a database that talks about future employment prospects across all member states, that it is used as a key database in socioeconomics, if you like. And nobody questions whether it is something that we need or not. We take it for granted that it is quite important. And of course, many international organizations use it as a key input to their analysis. So this is one. Then we have another tool, which is the European Skills Index, another product that I've developed from scratch. And it is a composite indicator in essence. So like is the Better Life Index of OECD, maybe the audience is aware of this already, and looks at a concept which is the skills system, focusing on 3 different aspects of a skill system: skills development, which talks and measures how the skills are being developed through the formal and non-formal education system, then how the skills they're activated into the labor market, because often we forget about this and we only focus on skills development, but we need to know how often, for example, the graduates find their first job. And we need to have a framework helping them. So this is a part of the skill system. And in the end of the day, we have the skills matching, which is the interplay between skills demand and skills supply. And we see whether the skills, the education have matches to what I actually do, what the demand is calling for. And we more recently have developed other indicators, such as the Labor and Skill Shortage Index, even more recently the Talent Gap Index, and all these fall under the umbrella of skills intelligence.
All right, I see. So let's circle back to the European Skills Index, because that's very interesting. And is this an index that is, because we research the same thing in Skill Lab in some degree, and what we find fascinating but also complicated about the official statistics, as we call them, is that we rarely know which indicators to take into account when trying to decide if a skill is rising in a country or declining in a country. So, should we take into account life expectancies, life quality, education levels, maybe, I don't know, favorite foods? Let's say, I don't know. I mean, there are so many indexes that we don't know how to put together to draw some insights. So, is there some golden standards that you use in CEDEFOP?
Absolutely. So there is the OECD/Jersey handbook for constructing composite indicators, and it outlines 10 steps for doing so. So we start with a theoretical framework, and everything can go in the theoretical framework. For example, we see that I mentioned already about the skill system, that we have 3 pillars. Let's say that you start with defining the main pillars. Then maybe you think that you can break down your pillars into sub-pillars. And then you start collecting the indicators that you think they're useful, and it could be anything at that stage. Then you follow the steps that start from cleaning your data, treating the missing data, normalizing your data, aggregating the data, and then finding out what pillars are being formed and confirmed by the methodology. And there is a quite strict process, because you may start with everything, but the end product is going to be something which is much smaller. The power of a skills index of any composite indicator is that it reduces a multi-dimensional concept into a single number in the end of the day. And this is very powerful. And this is something that gets the headlines. It's something that draws the attention. And I was very pleased to hear that the other day, the University of Macedonia, if I'm not wrong, gave an honorary doctorate to Professor Hardouvelis, who was Minister of Finance. And I heard that in his acceptance speech, he presented the European Skills Index, showed the results for Greece, and said that, look, Greece needs to make serious investment when it comes to to both pillars. So the question is, would he have done so just using one indicator? Probably not. But because you have a tool that summarizes or creates even a concept, it is very powerful to do so. So again, to go back to your original question, you need to go through a process. You may, in the European Skills Index, we have 16 indicators.
Okay.
But you know how many we have tested? Over 100.
Yeah, yeah.
In the
I can
end
imagine.
of the day, you keep those that contribute statistically to your index. For example, if you have indicators that have a very high correlation, then of course you may have to choose one, or again, if they have very highly negative correlations, you need to do the same. So you need to follow this process. But there are some golden rules for choosing indicators. For instance, they have to be collected for all member states if you're doing something at the pan-European level. There are ways to treat missing data, but they have to be collected as a rule for all countries. They should have the coverage that you're interested. They have to be continuous. So if you use a survey from 2015, it's good, but if it's not going to be repeated again, then the power of the index is to measure and track performance over time, because you have the results, you can take some actions, then you go back to the results and you see if the actions have impacted the results of the index. If you don't have the data to do so, then probably it's a waste of time. Then they have to be clear and transparent, because you have a concept that you're measuring and you have an indicator. Okay, so you have a higher score in your indicator. Is this good or bad? You should know exactly what it is, because let's say that we measure spending on education. Okay, but spending, it is a good thing, but it could be also a bad thing. It could indicate that we're not mature. We don't know which direction the spending should go to. So, as I say, you need to measure outcomes and not intentions. And this is very important. And lastly, you need to pick indicators that they're policy relevant and can be influenced by policy decisions. Because if you present the results to a policymaker, the policymaker should be in a position to say, okay, so we're falling behind in labor market activity. Let's do something about it. If you present something that a policymaker cannot associate, then probably you need to pick another indicator. So again, giving you a final answer, yes, there are golden standard, they're set out there, and a successful composite indicator, in the end of the day, should be audited by the Joint Research Center. There's a department that is dealing with composite indicators. The European Skills Index has been benefited from this collaboration. You give them the results, they go through a strict process, they get back to you with some outcomes, then you refine your indicator, your composite index, and then they end up with the audit report. And then you have a stamp that what you have done, it is statistically sound, and you can, if you say it is bulletproof, and at least that maybe people will not like it,
Yes.
obviously,
Yeah.
but statistically you have
data is
done,
data.
yeah, exactly, bravo. You
Okay.
have done the best you could.
Okay, I see. I'm glad because we are in agreement with what we do in SkillUp, so we're in the right direction. So I have two questions now, and let's start with the methodological one. So we talk about skills intelligence, right? But how intelligent is it really? So the methodologies that you use, are they simply aggregating the data and presenting some descriptive information? Do you use more technical things? And most importantly, how has AI impacted your work, particularly in the last years?
Excellent. Okay, so under the skills intelligence umbrella fall different tools that we have developed and we maintain at CEDEFOP. I may share with the audience that we invented, even though it sounds a little bit megalostomic, if
Yeah.
I say this
Okay.
into English, but we came up with the term skills intelligence, and that was about 10 years ago. And now, as you mentioned in the introduction, it is widely used in the European agenda. So I have drafted the first definition of what is skills intelligence with my team, of course. I have not
Yes.
doing it alone. So how we define skills intelligence, we have said that it is the outcome of an expert-driven process of identifying, analyzing, synthesizing, and presenting qualitative and or quantitative skills and labor market information. And this could be drawn from multiple sources adjusted to the needs of different users. So skills intelligence has to be kept up to date and adjusted when user needs change.
Yes.
And this is very important and comes to your second question about what happens with AI. We monitor the developments, and ourselves, we have an AI team at CEDEFOP that now they work with big data, and they're trying to take it to a step further. As of course, I understand you do the same with the excellent work you do at Skills Lab. And one of the projects, for example, that we run is collecting online job vacancy ads, which is, as you know very well, scrapping the online ads throughout Europe, and then use the data, applying AI techniques to see which skills are most in demand, where is it going to, with what it can be associated. But I think you would agree with me that we're still living in the embryonic stage of these
Yes,
developments.
surely.
So we also need to be quite careful when we assess the results. Because one thing we should not be doing is misleading, let's say, the audience by providing some information that, as I said before, is not clear what it means.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. And my second question, so let's go to the results of the intelligence process, let's say. So do you have any useful insights for, let's say, for Greece, because we are both from Greece, so
Absolutely.
let's keep it in Greece for now. So any useful insights on skills and sectors that are particularly important, let's say?
Okay, so Greece overall, I would say it is an interesting case. It's obviously a small economy. It is based very much in tourism. It is based very much in agriculture. We know this already. For instance, in 1981, if you look at the census of population, you will see that something like 40% of the labor force will be employed in agriculture. Obviously, this has been dramatically reduced to something like 10, 15%. It keeps going down, and the projections, they indicate that there will be a further decrease in the sector. But nevertheless, even though we do say very often that agriculture will be declining in terms of employment, I'm not talking about productivity or
Yes.
output, I'm talking about employment, and that's important. At the same time, it's a very old sector, which means that a massive amount of workers will be retiring. So we'll need
Yeah.
to replace them. The extent that we'll need to replace them, we don't know, because then it is a discussion about the introduction of AI and the investments that need to be made. I will not get into that right now. But what we see is that many jobs, most job openings will be due to the need to replace existing workforce. Meaning, because there are also young people listening, yes, we do have the ICT sector that you know very well, which is growing,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, it is a small sector. It is very difficult to keep up the pace of the demand, meaning that there is a need for some new specialization, but until we provide the training and people attend this training, it will take some time. So there will always be shortage ICT professionals.
Okay.
But there also, other than being a small sector, a growing sector, I repeat, but a small sector, it's also a very young sector.
Yes.
So we'll not have replacements in the foreseeable future.
That's true.
Overall, we see that at least 9 out of 10 jobs openings will be because of the need to replace workers. And the projections to 2035, we see that employment will be stagnating, not only Greece, but in the European Union. So there are many questions there because we know about competitiveness. We have all gone through the Draghi report, and I'm very proud to have helped towards this report, providing skills intelligence on shortages. And Professor Draghi, he picked the fact that engineers, which are key to the realization of the twin transitions, and they're key to the success and competitiveness, which is the catchphrase of the last few months, there will be in shortage. And there will be shortage because there will be growing demand. As I said, we need to realize the twin transition, the digital and the green. And we need this because the supply chain of these transitions, we need them. They're old at the same time. So the problem becomes even further. The good thing, if we look at the European Union, is that we have the numbers. People pursue higher education. So what field of study they will pursue, we don't know. And it is not our business to know, in the sense that everybody is free to choose whatever he or she likes. We cannot force anybody. That happened many decades ago with what is called manpower planning, when they had the veterans going back to the labor market of the war, going back in the US into the labor market, and they need to scan the needs and say, okay, then maybe we can try to predict the needs and then direct people towards these specializations. Maybe it happens in other parts of the world, but in the Western world, it doesn't happen anymore. And this is quite important. But going back to Greece, okay, so we have this the two transitions. We have the digital transition that has a very strong impact into the labor market. We see that electricity would be one of the fastest growing sectors. And this is because we follow the developments. And if you like, we're also in the forefront. So there is a push for renewable energy. Whether the sector that use with traditional oil and petroleum, it will be declining in terms of employment. And as I said, also computer and programming is a increasing sector. We see that there are data centers opening in Greece, also here in Thessaloniki, and this is very important. And we should not forget about the traditional industries, the tourism sector. Of course, it's something which is very important for Greece. It is as you may think, it is something that helps the economy a lot. It's not a sector that will help us grow too much as opposed to the other sectors, but this is something that we really depend on. And it is fascinating when where the debate of skills goes into this, because in Greece we're very keen and we're very interested in these sectors, but often they provide temporary jobs. They don't provide the career, if you like.
Yes, I
and
see.
Often we see that in comparison with other countries, we lack some basic customer services skills that can take us to the next level. Of course, I'm not talking about the great big restaurants or the great big hotels. I'm talking about the small and medium hotel or the restaurant. And this is about the sectors. And then from the sectors, you can make the projection about the occupations, because the sectors employ certain occupations. So you can anticipate that the occupations most employed in this will be growing. But as I said before, we should not forget about the replacements, that they will be massive in sectors. For example, in the European level, we see that manufacturing will not be creating many new jobs because of AI as well, depending on the country, of course, and the degree that they introduce the new technologies and they stop the assembly lines or whatever, and they move towards clean vehicles. But the sector is so old that the replacements, whether will be materialized, we don't know, they will be massive. So if you account for this, then indeed in manufacturing will be one of the biggest employer in the years to come in Europe.
Okay, this raises a very interesting point, because surprised, let's say in quotes, we are talking about stagnation and replacements, but shouldn't we strive to reskill the workforce or upskill the workforce? So should the focus be in designing training programs for the existing workforce, or should we focus on addressing the need for replacement and ensuring that the replacements have the required skills? Which of the two is more important, let's say, in Greece or even EU-wide?
Konstantine, this is a very important point that you raise. The problem and the pressure comes, as you rightly pointed out, from the supply side, because what we see in the projections is that to 2035, eventually, the overall participation rate will be declining. It sounds a bit crazy because we extend the working life, we try to get more disadvantaged group, and rightfully we do so into the labor market, and that helps. But the core of the workforce, which is people aged, let's say 25 to 40, 55, it is shrinking as we speak.
Yes.
And when I say this, I always use the metaphor of a spinning top. Spinning top is the toy that we have all played with, that, you just spin it and then it goes on and on and on. A good spinning top should be thick in the middle and slim in the bottom and the top. And this is the structure of the workforce. This is how it should like. The top and the bottom, they're the young people and the old people, but the core should be thick. What's happening now as the time passes and as the spinning top keeps spinning is that the middle part, people primates, they keep becoming smaller as a group, and this is a problem.
And I suppose that the bottom is getting larger.
It's getting thicker. So is this good for the spinning top? No. Is this good for the workforce? No.
No.
So that raises a series of questions. For instance, we are in an AI revolution. We have to deal with it. We don't have the option not to deal with it. We have to be in the forefront. We have a workforce that is aging fast, and you know that knowledge comes best when it comes at the early stages of somebody's life. So we will have to learn old dogs, new tricks.
Yes.
It's very
Okay.
challenging. So there comes what you said, the lifelong learning policies. They need to play a key role. And we see that there are some countries that they're doing well. If you want to focus on Greece, I would say that looking at the skill system of Greece, we have some antitheses presented there. On the one hand, we see that we very much appreciate the education, we stay in education, we don't drop out from education.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we neglect lifelong learning. We have one of the lowest percentages of people attending any sort of training courses while in employment. On the one hand, this could be that our employment environment is not as challenging as it could be in the Netherlands, for example. It doesn't matter. It is key to stay competitive because we know that we will be changing careers way more than we used to do in the
Mhm.
past.
Yeah.
That will probably exit the same profession that we entered or the same role. And it is absolutely essential that we follow this route of upskilling, of reskilling, and also preparing for the replacements. For
Okay.
instance, we know that some of the most to be replaced occupations refer to managers. This is very challenging.
That's bad for me.
That's I don't know if it is if it is bad for you and which perspective you're talking about it, but there's some people saying that okay, the skills of a good manager cannot be taught because they come from experience.
Mhm.
There is another part of people saying that we're fed up with managers, and thanks God they're retiring because they're acting managers. They're people that have ended up into managerial roles without having had a background in managing people.
Mhm. Mhm.
So in the end, they're making their own inverted commas decisions,
Yes. Okay. I see.
impacting the life of everybody else.
I see.
So
I see.
in that aspect, maybe your life will be better in the
Yeah.
future. We don't know.
Maybe.
But in any case, we need to be prepared. And the same goes for health professionals. It is an aging workforce. There is a focus on increasing the healthcare sector also as an outcome of COVID, as an outcome of
Yeah.
aging population. But to have people studying medicine, it's not something easy because it takes long, it's very costly. The working conditions, they're terrible. They have to work late, they have to deal with
Yeah.
blood. So we need to be very careful and we need to be looking at the data. They could be really revealing about what are the shortages in the future and can really help us be better prepared.
Okay. So talking about data and to close off as a final, let's say, question, say that we had a policymaker entering the podcast now and saying, okay, guys, this is very interesting, but what should I do in the future? I mean, what would you say that he or she does? Some takeaway message, some key points, let's say, based on the skills intelligence processes that you do as CEDEFOP. Some main
Very good,
points.
very good. So maybe I will say the key points that I use to summarize what needs to be done in order to improve the skill system, because a healthy skill system has many benefits, has many spillovers. For example, even gender equality goes through a better skill system. Less
Yeah.
crime goes through a better skill system. Happiness goes through a better skill system. You
Yeah.
see, it has many extensions, even though people think that it is a concept that maybe even it doesn't exist. When we try to see the correlations, we see that it can have an impact on many aspects that can impact our life. So I would say that overall, we need to focus on lifelong learning and continuous education, including vocational education and training that in many countries is a second choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is a second choice with a reason, and we need to work towards the attractiveness. So this is a message for the policymakers, how to make vocational education and training more attractive. Then we need to have a stable education system. There are countries
Yes.
where we see the problems is where we see that countries have been reforming their education system and the skill system overall for a very long time, because it takes time until the results show up. So the continuous reforms, they're not working very well. And overall, I would say that we need always to have a better link between the demands of the labor market and the supply. It's not easy. It's not the only purpose of education and training, but we see that the better aligned systems with the needs of the labor market, the better are the outcomes. So these are some, let's say, takeaway messages for any policymaker,
Yeah.
because even the ones that are heading the European Skills Index, they do have areas that are falling behind. So we don't have, of course, the perfect country, the perfect system.
Yeah.
We can all learn even from others. People can learn from Greece. Even though we are at the bottom of the index, there are aspects of our culture and our education approach that could be very useful even for the ones that are at the top of the index.
Okay. And so speaking about Greece, final question, I promise. So I see many countries adopting, for example, Iceland or other countries adopting the 4-day, 6-hour week labor model, let's say. People are working less and they say that productivity benefits from this model. So here in Greece, we see many people complaining that the work hours are very long, they work a lot. So what should Greece try to adopt that, and what prevents it from doing so? Is it a matter of de-skilling? Is it a matter of skills after all, or is it something else?
It is an interesting question. Of course, I would say that it depends on many factors. There's some anecdote evidence suggesting that indeed productivity has gone up, but again, there are other people complaining that all this flexibilization and the opportunity that you have to work from anywhere, even using the mobile, keeps you on all the time, which means that you may be at your office, let's say 3 times a week, but you may end up working very long hours or staying even during weekends, not having the right to disconnect, if you like. So it is important to have this regulated. Now, if you ask me as an individual what could be the situation in Greece, I would think that in the private sector, there are cases that telework is widely used,
Yes.
and they're benefiting from it. Maybe the problem, I assume, I don't know, it's in the public sector. So I would say that maybe to a certain extent it is also the nature of the economy, because you cannot telework if you work at a bar or a restaurant,
Yeah.
of
Okay.
course, or like in a small manufacturing unit. Again, you need to be at your workplace. So partly it could be because of that, and then it could be an issue of trust in general, because there's a fine line between teleworking and having an excuse to stay at home.
Yeah.
And let's say myself coming from an academic environment, it's totally natural that I can work from home. When I came to CEDEFOP, we had a very strict rule of a number of hours. After the COVID, we have realized that this is not important anymore, because we need to focus on the outcomes and not on the hours. And that makes total sense. Like, you can write your academic article when you're at Starbucks by the sea. What's the problem?
I've done that.
You've done that. I'm sure you have
To
done
be
that.
honest.
Yes, yes, yes. I've done it myself, and
Yeah.
I keep doing it, of course. So I think one barrier that we may have to break is the issue of trust. We need to trust that when somebody teleworks, will actually be teleworking, benefiting from the flexibility that working of com harms. Of course, if you have to care for your son, for your daughter, you should be able to do that. But I think that once this has been established and the managers, they see that actually this works, then I don't see a problem why we shouldn't really adopt this.
Okay. So thank you very much. This has been very, very useful. And I hope that more people use CEDEFOP services and benefit from the insights. So thank you again for accepting the invitation.
Absolutely, it has been my pleasure. Very nice discussing all these interesting issues with you, and I hope all the best for your work.
Thank you very much. So thanks everyone also for watching this third episode of the Skilla podcast, and stay tuned for more.